as we get into the final stretch of the all-important midterms, do Republicans really have the wind at their backs? Let's meet tonight's party panel and decide together. We've got Washington Times opinion editor, Fox News contributor. He gonna put the hurt on you. It is Charlie Hurt. We've got Democrat strategist, radio host, and also a Fox News contributor, the luscious Leslie Marshall, and senior editor at Reason, who always posts very cute pictures of his dog. It is Robbie Suave. All right, welcome everyone. And Charlie, let us get into it. Let's talk a little bit about this Florida debate. What did you think of Ron DeSantis versus Charlie Crist? It is a tighter race than people assumed.
Sure. Of course, that one zinger right there thought summed up the entire debate. It was a great line. Obviously, it's what got picked up the most. But no, at the end of the day, Democrat, and I think the problem that Charlie Crist has in Florida is a little bit different, just because he's running against somebody who has a record in Florida, has a very good record in Florida, who's able to present a case for getting reelected. And it's sort of the inverse of the problem that Democrats have everywhere else, where they are running as, having been in control in Washington for the last 2 years, in control of all levers of power in Washington, and have absolutely nothing but misery to show for it. And Republicans are able to feast on that misery that people have. And so, so it's, and I think it is going to be a red wave. But I think, if anything, we're understating how big of a red wave nationally we're going to actually see in 2 weeks.
We do not know. I mean, there's still so much that can happen between now and the election, and so much of it comes down to issues and what candidates choose to talk about, as you know, Leslie. So, I mean, this is one that I don't think is a winner for Democrats, and that's talking about gender transition surgery for minors. There are a lot of people who, I'm one of those people. When you are 18, I don't care what flag you fly. I don't care what you do to your body. I don't care who you are with or how you identify or what you declare yourself. If you want to be a birthing person with the beard, have at it. Have a great time. But I do draw the line at those surgeries for kids, and I think this is a losing issue for Democrats.
I honestly don't think it should be an issue for any politician, my party or the Republicans. I think this is like you're a parent, I'm a parent. This is something between the parent, the child, and their doctor. I get so tired of politicians trying to put MDs after their name. And I would agree with you, that's not a winning issue. It's certainly not an issue that's top of mind for voters on my side of the aisle, or certainly the other side of the aisle.
Well, it seems to be Democrats who are bringing it up with some enthusiasm, which is frankly odd.
I only saw Charlie bringing it up with enthusiasm so far in a debate. I know some people might have cringed, but I would say, to this Charlie's point, if Florida is an extremely red state, and even though you're talking about a red wave, and I've already said I believe Republicans will have the House, but I do think Democrats are going to end up with the Senate, you should see numbers, and you should see a margin much higher in the favorability column for DeSantis, and you just don't see that. There should be more than one line that takes the night, and it shouldn't be this close. It shouldn't be this close a race in that state.
All metrics and all outlets have the governorship in Florida likely Republican. So Charlie Crist, Robbie, let's talk a little bit about Oz versus Fetterman. How should Oz handle this debate tonight, Robbie?
Well, look, he has to go for it, because he is slightly behind according to the polls, and I think it's still more likely a Fetterman pickup. But he has a huge opportunity because he is a TV man, and you know what? Frankly, Dr. Oz has, I think, not been convincing to any segment of even the Republican electorate. I think there's a lot of acknowledgement that he was not the dream candidate for really any faction of the conservative movement, or for independents, or for anyone. So, he has a chance to prove that, and Fetterman has done nothing. Look, obviously his medical situation is unfortunate, but it is a reality, and voters have every right to judge his mental fitness based on it. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just true. We're picking, this is an important role. There's only 100 people who get to do this job. So Dr. Oz should pursue every, rhetorical tactic available to him to convince Pennsylvanians that he's the right man for the job. And it is going to matter because, as you said, we are talking about a race in Pennsylvania, in Nevada, in Georgia, in Arizona that is going to decide. Look, we know we're going to have divided government because Republicans are going to take the House and Biden still has the White House, but the Senate could really go either way, and we'll see. It could hinge on this debate performance, frankly.
Yes, that's a great point. That's why all of this matters. And what really matters to voters right now, still very much inflation and the economy, and a lot of those other issues are just distraction in terms of what really, really resonates with people right now. Is it time to kiss our future goodbye? We just met. According to a new Gallup poll, only 42% of U.S. adults think today's youth, the kids, the young people, will have a better life than their parents. That is down from 60% in 2019. Man, people are really sour on this whole thing. Authors of this study wrote, quote, "The general pattern throughout the trend has been that in periods of economic challenges such as elevated unemployment, recession, or high inflation, optimism is comparatively low," end quote. Similar trends of optimism were reported during the 2008 Great Recession. Are things really looking that bleak for our kids? The party panel is back. Charlie Hurt, Leslie Marshall, Robbie Suave. So, Charlie, what do you tell your kids? That they're going to be urchins and hobos for the rest of their days, not just for Halloween?
No, I just tell them to work hard because if you work hard, you're going to have to really work hard, especially when you have generations ahead of you who have decided to rack up $30 trillion plus in debt and bequeath it to their children. It's immoral. It's disgusting. It's no way to run a country, but that's what we've done. And if you have a hard time understanding that, just imagine this. Imagine if instead of leaving your children a house or some money or a car or something like that, you left them a credit card statement for about $1 million. Oh. The actual debt that we have racked up that our children are going to be stuck with paying is about $900,000 per American. That's not per citizen or per taxpayer. That's per American. So that's what we're leaving our children. So no wonder they look around and think that they're not going to live a life as good as their parents.
All right, but it's not just that, is it, Leslie? There have been massive shifts and even things like quiet quitting. And people are like, I'm really not going to work that hard. I'm only going to wear the bare minimum 16 pieces of flair. What do you mark that up to?
Sorry, my husband got rid of half his clothes. Don't talk to me. Downsizing. Hey, people do tiny houses. People want tiny closets. I think it's a bunch of things because I have a 14 and 15-year-old, and I agree with you, Charlie. You have to work hard. I'm a pessimist, so I kind of have a doom and gloom attitude about the future all the time.
As most libs do, Leslie.
Yes, sorry. But look, I don't think it's not just about what are we leaving our kids, but I honestly think, and I'm going to get pushback for this, but what are we teaching our kids? I'm seeing American children, I'm sorry, I love our country, I love my kids, and I'm guilty of this as a parent. Entitlement. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. I know a lot of parents out there who don't give their kids chores, but they give them an ATM card. And I'm not judging. I'm a parent. I'm not perfect. I'm just saying I think it's much more than, certainly more than politics, and certainly more than the up and downs of the economy going forward. I think how are we teaching them to survive? And also, what is better? Does better mean more money? Does better mean a bigger house? Does better mean better health and a sense of community and friends and happiness? What's happiness? I think it's different for Americans than other countries.
The Greeks called it eudaimonia. So, Robbie, it's a lot of things, but people are more pessimistic because the American dream has always been whatever you do, the outcome will be more successful than what your parents had, either in opportunity or an expression of things like wealth.
Yeah, look, I think some pessimism is fair. The world has gotten better in a lot of ways, technologically speaking. You're better off. But look, the cost of education has gotten a lot worse. The quality hasn't gotten better. Healthcare costs a lot more. The quality hasn't gotten any better. Childcare costs a ton more. Labor-intensive things cost more. Notice a lot of these things are things the government has aggressively subsidized and regulated and tried to fix. Those are all the things that have gotten more expensive without any increase in quality. So I would suggest that maybe our policies have gone awry somewhere if all this effort has made these things not any better and just, you know, more unaffordable for the average American. So I do understand the frustration that many young people and frankly middle-aged people. I'm a millennial. We're middle-aged now. It is appreciably more difficult in some ways, and that I chalk up to government policies that should be different.
Yes, and they should be limited. I mean, I hope that's one thing that people take away with their COVID skepticism, is that maybe the government shouldn't be expected to do as much. Maybe it's doing too much. Maybe it has too much power and too much control over our lives. And maybe if we shrank the size and scope of government, we would be more capable of realizing our dreams and figuring out what happiness is for ourselves, and not some version of that that is sold to us by government status like AOC. Well, American kids, they might not see a bright future ahead, but their schools certainly have. The Biden administration last year allocated at least $122 billion to American schools to cover reopening costs. That's funny, because only 15% of that has actually been dispersed. The rest, it's just sitting in school bank accounts, despite a dire need to help with pandemic learning losses. Districts complain of staffing shortages and supply chain disruptions. So what should they be doing with all that cash? And why isn't there more urgency to spend it on your kids, Charlie?
Well, because at the end of the day, politics winds up being a pretty binary thing, as you were just talking about. And I think it's a really important point. You can either vote to expand government and empower government, or you can vote to shrink government and limit their reach. And this is a perfect example. Almost everything government touches, they ruin, they wreck. And the higher up the government is, all the way to the federal government level or some global government level, the farther away it is from voters at a person level, the more disastrous the government is and the more uncontrollable the government is. And so at the end of the day, I think politics has come down to a very binary thing. Is the person running for office wanting to enrich themselves, empower themselves, or are they trying to enrich and empower the citizen? And this is a perfect example where government has screwed things up because they sought to enrich and empower themselves.
Well, it's an interesting point, because there are a lot of parents now, Leslie, and I'm sure you talk to people at your kids' schools, and they want some of that power back because they see that their children are individuals. And one-size education, we can take housing and healthcare out of it and just look at education. One-size education does not fit all. And that's why parents, they want to be the ones who are empowered. They want to be the ones who are making those decisions. But with public schools having $122 billion that they're not spending a dime of, especially in places like Baltimore, where learning losses have been the steepest. Could that be one of the things that's driving parents to the ballot box for these midterms?
I don't see that as a top issue among voters. I know it worked really well in Virginia for a Republican victory there. But when you talk about the money, I think this is terrible, because schools will say, and to me this doesn't have to do with politics, schools will say, we need more money. And certainly back in March of 2021, when they got this money, that's what they were saying. And it bothers me that they've only used this percentage, a small percentage, 15%, like you said. But we also see a difference not just from state to state, school district to school district, and certainly there are some districts that have greater needs than others. To your point about parental choices, I want to say, actually, the first thing you said about one size does not fit all. I wish I could high five you in person on that. I can't stand standardized tests. I can't stand them. They only test math and verbal. Our kids are so much more than that. You can have a genius child that does not do well with standardized testing. I don't agree one size fits all education. And sadly, I think we've been doing that Oh God, we've been doing that since Adam and Eve.
No, it's absolutely true. And Robbie, you have written so much about these broken systems, you know, but we keep in New York, $25,000 per student in public education. That's what they spend. Connecticut, $20,000. New Jersey, $20,000. California's about $14,000 per student throughout the state of California. But, you know, we see steep learning losses. We see illiteracy. We see, you know, math comprehension at the bottom of the barrel in terms of global competitiveness. So they've got $120 billion. Why are we throwing it toward these systems that do such a great disservice?
And importantly, the learning loss is concentrated among schools that it took a longer time to open. Private schools, Catholic schools, for instance, were more likely to be open, some of them the whole time, and the learning losses are contained. It was the virtual education. It did not work for the vast majority of students. They got all this money, supposedly, so they could safely reopen schools, and as this article pointed out, many of them didn't spend it. What I suspect is that in the cases where only 15% of the money was spent, it's because it's been budgeted for automatic teacher and staff salary increases, so in which case they can't spend it all at once. They'll spend, you know, the next chunk next year and the next chunk next year, et cetera. You can't get rid of all the money if you're spending it on that so quickly. I would argue they should find to increase the salaries of teachers who are effective. Let's pay good teachers more. Let's recruit effective teachers, and let's not automatically protect teachers who are just there and who have not been proven to be effective, which is unfortunately what the current education system does vis-a-vis teachers unions, and why we need competition and what school choice provides.
But it's very interesting because teachers unions are the ones driving the narrative about staffing shortages, even though there's such a large chunk of parents and students who are leaving public school. So there are fewer students per classroom. So, you know, that should even out. But obviously teachers unions, they want that money for more teachers because they want the membership dues. That's what's driving this. Right. They're the ones who are propagating this myth, and it is incredibly dishonest. And those bad teachers that go to the bad districts who are unfireable, that is immoral. And those districts and those bad teachers should have that money stripped away. All right, party panel, thank you so much. Great discussions all around. Charlie, Leslie, and Robbie. I did this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. Very